is something that isn't automatic. I am not eating here. We need to leave. At a restaurant? Story 1. I went to a diner near me recently I had never heard of. There was no one eating at the tables inside. The woman who was at the front entrance walked away into the kitchen when I walked in the door. Then a dude came out of the kitchen and stood in her place and refused to acknowledge me. Then a girl came up and said something to him and he said, I know, just calm down, it's okay. Then she scurried off into the kitchen. I asked the guy if I could see a menu and he said, she'll be right back. I left. I don't know what was going in there, but I will never eat anything from there. Story 2. Someone handling the food while wearing gloves but then using their gloved hands to handle money, open doors, touch their face, etc. Or worse, someone handling food with bare hands while there are open wounds or band-aids. I've seen it. Immediate nope for me. Story 3. It's a bit specific, but if I'm looking to eat at a BBQ joint and I don't smell it well before I walk in, I know it's not going to be good. Ideally, I should be able to smell it from like a block away. Anytime I've ignored that instinct and gone in anyway, the food ended up being bland and dry as. Story 4. The smell of a dirty grease trap. After you've worked in a kitchen for a while, you recognize it instantly. It's an awful smell. And if a place isn't getting it regularly serviced, the rest of the operation is probably terrible too. I was going to pub trivia at a place I had worked at years earlier. As soon as I walked in, I smelled the smell and it was strong. I ended up calling the trap cleaning service and setting up an appointment for them without telling the manager. Story 5. I got 2 from the same Dunkin' Donuts. A worker sneezed into his gloved hands and gave them a half-hearted wipe on his pant legs. Immediately after, a customer came in to get donuts and I saw the man fill the order without changing his gloves. I went off and left. Later on, I went to leave a review explaining this and saw that I'm not the only one to point out their disgusting ways. Someone else posted a picture of a worker with his shoes off and dirty socked feet up on a table, sitting right next to a window for the public to see. Story 6. Besides being filthy or having rude service, one thing that will basically make me immediately turn around and leave is blaringly loud music and strange lighting. I just want to eat my meal in peace or be able to have a nice conversation with someone. Story 7. My brother told me this story. He saw a black cord-like thing sticking out of a wall. Thought it was a wire or something. Then it started to move. Apparently it was a mouse tail. That's not the worst part. He tells a waiter. Waiter grabs a spoon, one that is obviously something guests would be given to eat with, and attacks the tail with it. Him and his entire group just left. Story 8. Wife and I walked into a diner once and were seated. Waitress came over and handed us our menus. Her makeup was so caked on that bits of it were falling on our table. She then showed us the salad bar, which was a card table set up next to the front door, not iced or anything, with bowls of potato salad and macaroni salad with saran wrap over them. We got up and left. Story 9. Walked into a restaurant and I smelled sewage. They said a sewage backup had occurred and was being fixed by a plumber. I left anyways because the place was running like it was normal. No windows open or fans running to try and flush the smell. Yeah, it was warm outside, but seriously, I'd rather sweat than smell while eating. Story 10. My wife is Arabic, and one time we are at a kebab shop, and her demeanor changed, and when I asked why she explained that, she heard one kitchen staff ask the other, A, what are you doing? B, am throwing this old meat away? No, mix it with the fresh. These stupid Westerners can't tell anyway. Story 11. Having to look up a menu on your phone, music loud enough that you can't have a conversation, general lack of hygiene standards. I've walked out of restaurants for all 3 of those before. Story 12. Haven't seen squabbling servers on the list yet. That happened to 4 of us at a recently opened seafood-themed place that we vaguely knew the owner of and wanted to support, as new restaurants were a pretty big thing in our small city. Normally, we would have waited a couple months for the dust to settle and the place to figure itself out. But we went in their second week. House manager greeted and seated us and then disappeared. It was a little before standard lunch hour and midweek and nobody else was there. About 5 minutes of nothing later, we heard the distant yelling start from the kitchen area. After about a minute of that, a female server charged through the doors and grabbed menus and brought them over, muttering. Her opening words were, "Sorry if you heard that. That in there. What can you do?" We glanced at each other, asked for a few minutes before ordering drinks, and when she went back in the kitchen, left. Somehow the restaurant still managed to survive and is still there to this day. But if the excellent show The Bear didn't remind us of that experience. Story 13. If I go into a restaurant and sit for more than 15 minutes before someone comes to my table, I leave. If a roach scurries across the table, I am out. I go to the restroom immediately if no haven't been there before. The cleanliness of the restroom reflects the restaurant's cleanliness standards. Gross bathrooms? I am out. Story 14. I didn't even have to go into the restaurant. I was at my local bar, and the head cook from the restaurant across the street started coming in after his shifts pretty regularly. Just an overall sloven dude with the grossest habits, body odor, funky skin growths, unkept fingernails, and similar demeanor. None of the other regulars, including myself, will ever go back there. Story 15. Local Tex-Mex place here. Had a staff that were not as careful as they should have been. Found a bird's nest of curly hair in our salad. Our waiter was bald, and the only cooks I could see had long hair held back by hats. We did not eat the salad because we spotted it before that, but we did get up and leave. Story 16. Honestly, if I'm looking for a Chinese restaurant, I can immediately tell if it's good or not based on how many white people are eating there. If there are no Asians inside, I'm walking out and finding a different restaurant. And yes, I am Chinese. Story 17. It's full of screaming children running around. There's a strict dress code. It smells bad. My friend took me to a Mexican restaurant where the raw meat was all just on the counter unrefrigerated. The same salsa bowl was on the table all day, on between customers, so you were eating leftovers. When I said I didn't want to eat there, she got mad and said the food was great and I was stuck up. Story 18. If I see a sanitation score that is not an A, I'll leave. If I sit at a table and a server doesn't show up for 10 minutes, I'll leave. If I walk in and they are displaying MAGA bullshit, I'll leave. Story 19. This was a sort of on-purpose version of that. I stayed with a friend's family years ago and his dad told us we were going to visit some restaurants in the city. He said not to order anything at the first restaurant but to look at the menu and then get up and leave. Second restaurant had the same exact menu, half the prices. Both restaurants ordered from the same supplier. Story 20. No prices on the menu. No description of the dish on the menu. Can't read menu for whatever reason, exception to this if I'm not in a primarily English-speaking country. Place looks or smells dirty. Being ignored by staff. Staff is rude. The owner's manager obviously support Trump. Too noisy. Story 21. Seeing a waiter come out of the bathroom and the sink is dry. It happened to me. I don't care the cook or the restaurant is clean. Seeing someone who handles the plates, glasses, utensils didn't wash his hands. I'm out of there. Story 22. Recently blackballed one of my formerly go-to places because they hosted the local GOP party this year. We went there election night to try and get away from the mounting sense of depression and dread, and all we encounter is TVs tuned to election coverage and maggots cheering. I'm never going back. I'll go to the Irish pub down the road that had a better atmosphere and food, but not as good a view and a bit pricier. Story 23. Trump right-wing paraphernalia. Advertising that you don't take basic regulations, safe food handling, hand washing, sanitation, minimum wage, seriously doesn't make me want to trust you with my food. Story 24. Aside from the obvious dirt bugs grimmeratsec, a complete lack of staff definitely does it for me. Why are you trying to run on, for example, just 3 people when there's 9 jobs that need doing? I can't trust a place like that. Story 25. I do pest control for a living, and I used to love small mom and pop restaurants, especially taco places. Now, 5 years into my profession, I know a lot of subtle warnings. A place has a bug problem, one being a smell. I make a point to sit as close to the kitchen as possible just to get a true smell of what's going on back there. 34s of all taquerias have roaches from what I can tell, and am eating flavorless garbage from a chain restaurant whose kitchen is clean. Story 26. I went to a place last year that had a dog chewing on a T-bone on the floor, a server in dirty sweatpants, and the cook smoking in the dining room. It was summer, so I think they were mainly doing patio seating, but still, gross. Story 27. I was at a deli, and the person slicing lunch meats was wearing gloves while handling food and a hairnet. Awesome. Well, I watched him wipe the sweat off his forehead with his gloved hand and continue to wear those gloves while touching food repeatedly. That'll do it. Story 28. No service. Walked into a restaurant once. It was busy but had plenty of empty tables. There were servers going back and forth taking care of customers. I stood at the "please wait to be seated" sign for a good 5-7 minutes, and no one even said a word to me. Then I gave up and left. Story 29. The tables are so close to each other it frails like I'm dinning with strangers, and the overall noise it too loud to hear the person I'm sitting with. Last visit to the Cheesecake Factory. Story 30. Random misspelled words on the menu. Like if a menu says filet mignon or chicken cordon bleu. I don't trust the chef or staff to serve good or safe food if they can't do something basic correctly. Story 31. The day after the election, we walked into a locally owned breakfast spot in Branson, MO, and the waitress greeted us with, "Happy MAGA morning." I tuned on my heels so fast the door didn't even have time to shut behind me. Kept your facism away from my eggs and toast. Story 32. I went to a bagel place and heard Christian music. I will never make that mistake again. You can either have Jesus or good bagels, not both. And bagels are the better option by far. Story 33. Odor. As an extreme example, went to a restaurant for lunch, was seated. but the place smelled faintly of sewage. The waiter told us they had a backup in the bathroom. We left. But in general, if something smells bad when I walk in, then walking out. Story 34, dead plants. Either inside or outside. If they don't care enough about the appearance of the place to water occasionally, think of what else doesn't get a second thought. Also, as a gardener, I find it depressing. Story 35, mildew smell. Like a bar towel used to wipe down tables for weeks without being cleaned. It's the same smell from leaving one's clothes in the washer for several days before drying them. It says, clean isn't important here. Story 36. Any restaurant that says no one wants to work anymore. It means we treat our staff like and only pay the federal minimum, because it's law. Otherwise, we would pay them less. Story 37. The only times we have left, it was because of getting ignored by staff. A few times it was understandable, like a bus full of people there and half the restaurant, so we just left, as service was going to be long, etc. Other times, the staff just sucked. Didn't acknowledge us, even though they were just standing around. Not a good vibe. Time to leave. Oh, and we left a buffet place once because even though there wasn't many people there, they didn't have clean bowls and silverware. Seemed weird, plus the general apathy of the staff. So, out we went. Story 38. Crying babies. Screaming kids. I was the father of a lil girl too, and she would be a bit much out in restaurants, I get it. But I finally said okay, no more going to restaurants till she's older. It's not fair to everyone else. Not to the first date couple. Not to the date night married couple. Not to the milestone couples celebrating the longevity in their relationship. Not to the people that are about to get proposed to. Not to the person that's had the shittiest day or week or month, and tonight's to only night they are free to be able to get away from life and just enjoy a meal of solitude to calm down and recharge. If you know where kids bat out in public, make the sacrifice to order in or Uber Eats at least till they are older and can behave in public. I grew up where our mom would snap her fingers and say, "Let's go to the bathroom." Then we would pout. "Eat our dinner, lol. Ultimately, it's up to you." That's her decision. I understand you needing to get out of the house or you don't feel like cooking or whatever the situation may be, but I've seen parents just yell at their kids and then their partners, if they are there, and just pack up leave. Maybe they argued in the car ride home that can't be an enjoyable night for anyone. Story 39. Usually shitty service or if something grosses me out. I walked into a restaurant once about 5 minutes after they opened. The servers were all talking on one part of the restaurant and one of them burped so loudly it echoed in the whole restaurant. I was like, yeah, F this. Story 40. Happened to me at an old Chicago. No matter how much I tried to shoo the flies away, they got into my drink and were crawling all over the food that was served. I took a video and a few pictures, got up and walked out. Filed a complaint with the health depot the next day. That particular location is no longer in operation. Story 41. I don't eat at places that lack menu descriptions. I like to know what dishes I'm better of avoiding or like to eat despite the suffering that follows. Though, I don't expect them to match my diet. It let me judge whether the consequences are worth ordering the curry despite being intolerant to beans, or skip the garlic and onion in the tomato soup when I know the main dish is safe for me to eat. I have my cravings. Story 42. Dirty menus. Overwhelming scent of bleach. The bleach thing, since that tends to confuse people when I say it, bleach is for disinfecting, sure, but it's not an all-purpose cleaner. And if all you smell is bleach and not other cleaning chemicals, or preferably, you only smell the food they're cutting corners on cleanliness. Story 43. Side note that I think a lot of people need to hear. You can leave a restaurant before ordering. Yes, it was always allowed. You don't have to eat there or stay seated. Just leave. It's only as awkward as you perceive it. Go get a chocolate cake from the store and eat the whole thing on a Monday afternoon. There are no rules. Story 44. Oh, definitely when someone says, I'm not like other guys' girls because nothing screams unique and special like using the most overused cliche in the book. Truly groundbreaking. Story 45. When I was in college, my mom came to visit me and took me to a restaurant that was always busy. We walked in, took about 2 steps in, and both immediately turned around and walked out without even saying anything to each other. There was what only can be described as a moldy smell that hit us both right when we walked in. We both have a strong sense of smell, and I guess just knew that we didn't need to tell the other one why we decided to leave. Story 46. There's no music playing. Just feels totally off without music. Or if there's a really loud family of 20 sitting in the center of the restaurant laughing and screaming constantly. Story 47. My wife and I went to a restaurant for a few drinks at the bar and some apps. It was around 4:30 p.m., but this place gets a good early crowd. After we got our drinks, I see the bartender hit 2 martini glasses with a bottle, and they break into the ice well. The well was just filled by a busser. We look at each other as the bartender pulls pieces of glass out, then scoops out ice for someone else's drink from the corner of the well. So I ask, aren't you going to burn the ice? She looks at me and says she got all the glass out. The manager overhears and asks, "What up?" She tells him. He takes a scoop and removes about 3 of ice and calls it all good. We paid out bill and never went back there again. We figured if they're willing to risk their customers' health over a few dollars worth of ice, serving questionable food is probably okay with them too. Story 48. I walked into this tiny Jamaican restaurant, hole-in-the-wall sort of place, was prepared to drink and eat for a while, as a celebration, and I was in an unfamiliar city. It's in an industrial complex. Was a few drinks in, and didn't look up recommendations online. So, when me and my girl walk in, it seems like the lights are half off. Everyone looks at us, but we walk in anyways. So, it's like 10 people total. They're all middle-aged black dudes. Everyone is quiet as we walk in. Literally, everyone is quiet and looking at us. So, I'm like, "Hey, hi, I would like a beer, please." Everyone but the waitress looks away and continues quietly chatting. The waitress is like, "None." But the place is full of empty bottles, and I can see beer in the fridge. I realize people are smoking inside illegal in my country. I said, "Oh, can we order whiskey?" So polite. She just walks away. I look closer at the guys inside, and they are scary as eaten scars. Tats. One guy with an eye patch, gang patches, chains, rings, hats, sunglasses, gang flags, Hell's Angels gear, and one guy wearing white and black checkboard flag. A dude looks at me and just says, "Problemo?" So, I said, "Okay, thanks. Sorry to interrupt," and walked out. Story 49. I saw a TikTok the other day where some roaches were watching a group of friends eat through a crack in the wall next to them or something. Not the best thing to see where you're trying to eat, haha. Story 50. Where I live, any sanitation rating below 90. My mom used to work for the health department, and while some point deductions are a bit nitpicky, the stuff that gets you marked down to a B or C rating is pretty gross. Like bugs crawling on the food in the kitchen level of gross. Story 51. Sounds silly, but dirty windows. A new little fast food place opened up near me, and for 2 months the windows were still dirty from the construction in that place. Now they're clean now, I'm willing to order there. But if they can even clean their windows before opening, I'm not eating there. Story 52. Niche thing, but no cash. I want to preserve the ability of people to use cash for untracked purchases, and am willing to endure a bit of inconvenience for it, unless my wife's getting hungry. Story 53. As someone with food allergies. If I ask the waiter a question about a menu item and they don't take me seriously, or check with the chef, or alternatively don't come back to confirm what I can eat, I will leave. The anxiety is too much. Story 54. Gloved workers. I can guarantee that 80 of the time they touch something nasty and didn't change their gloves. Gloves give a false sense of cleanliness. Even I myself was guilty of it until I just stopped wearing them. A washed hand is cleaner than a dirty glove. With no gloves, I would wash my hands so much that they'd crack. With gloves, I rarely wash them. Story 55. This happened to us recently. While we were looking at the menu displayed, my partner saw a rat run directly into the kitchen from the open back door. We made our excuses and left immediately. Story 56. Owner's memo posted on the door, front counter, window, etc. about how his employees deserve tips and rely on them to live. Lower than C inspection notice. Story 57. Went to a restaurant called Fireside Mountain. It was a buffet-style place. In the booth behind us, someone changed their child's shitty diaper. We complained to the MGR and got the out of there. We'll never go back. I know it wasn't the restaurant's fault, but holy, it was foul. Edit, it's called Fire Mountain. Story 58. As someone from a touristic place, the main menu is not in the local language menu, includes pictures of dishes. Somebody is paid to be outside trying to bring you in, or convince you to eat there. Absence of locals when I get in. Story 59. A friend and I once walked into a pub one afternoon. There was maybe one table with customers and the staff didn't realize we were there for a few minutes. While we were waiting, both of us noticed the smell of mildew. The bartender eventually saw us and pointed in our direction. The 2 or 3 staff members around him scattered like cockroaches, and nobody actually approached us. We left. Story 60. The cleanliness of the bathrooms. 100. As soon as I'm seated, I head off to the bathroom to clean my hands and to check out the bathrooms. If it's disgusting, I immediately leave. IMO. If a restaurant doesn't care about their bathrooms, which are visible to guests, imagine the areas of the restaurant that aren't visible. Story 61. Upscale pizza place. Just had pizza arrive at our table. Out of the corner of my eye, this lady starts changing her kid's diaper on the table. In front of everyone. No. I told the manager I wanted a refund, which was given and left. MAGA trash. Story 62. This may be a localized thing, but a C or lower food safety grade, or none displayed at all. If you can't even manage to look like you do things well when you know you're being inspected, How bad is it the rest of the time? Story 63 moved to a new city a few years ago and were recommended a Mexican restaurant from some people. Ordered takeout a couple times and it was really good. One day my wife and I went to the restaurant itself for lunch. It was pretty busy but nothing crazy. Maybe 34 full. Plenty of staff. Nothing was out of the ordinary for a popular restaurant. We stood waiting to be seated for no less than 15 minutes. Not a single person that worked there acknowledged us or spoke to us. And it wasn't like they were all busy either. At least a few were just standing around, and one even came to the host stand and we thought she would seat us. Nope, she grabbed something without even looking at us and walked away. Haven't been back and haven't ordered from them since. Story 64. One time, me and my now wife was then just my GF walked up to this restaurant I used to work at. Turns out my ex worked there and she looked at us point blank and said, "We are out of food. I'm so sorry." Not 100 relevant to the question, but funny nevertheless. Story 65 walked into a Taco Bell years ago, and they had a puppy on the prep table. Puppy was cute, asked to pet it. They brought it to the front counter, pet it. They asked what I wanted. Nothing. You have a dog on the counter. Walked out.